Hello and welcome to this week's Cat's Whiskers podcast. My name is Jono Bullard. Well, not a great weekend for the Nottingham Panthers. The season is over. And Andy.
Hello.
And Aaron.
Hello.
Are here to discuss Panthers going out of the playoffs and all the other playoff results. We'll also be talking about some of your Ask CWTV questions, which we got quite a few this week, and not surprisingly on very, very similar topics as well. And we'll also be looking ahead to the playoff finals weekend coming up. However, we need to talk about it. Let's go back to the weekend. Panthers against Coventry in the playoff quarter-final. Saturday night at the NIC. A 3-3 draw. Coventry going ahead through Ryan O'Mara and Ben Arndt before Brandon Benedict and Guillaume Doucet equalised in the second period. Derek Lee put the Blaze back ahead on the power play before that man Doucet again with a power play goal just 6 minutes and 16 seconds from time. A 3-3 result, Panthers outshooting the Blaze by 47-28. Brian Stewart having an excellent game for the Coventry Blaze on Saturday night. So, all to play for on Sunday at the Coventry Sky Dome. It finished 2-1 to the Coventry Blaze with Ashley Tate and Sescon scoring very, very early on. By 5:17 they were 2-0 up. Cody Wild pulled one back for the Panthers at 29:53. However, that was the end to the scoring, and the Coventry Blaze went through to the Final Four at this coming weekend. Panthers again outshooting the opponents by 38 shots to 28. So, Aaron, I'll start with you because you was at both games this weekend as I was. Disappointed? Angry? What were your feelings at the end?
My initial feeling was of just general depression. No, gutted, to be honest. Even now, I'm not angry, but I just generally just feel gutted. I thought, going into the Sky Dome level was not the best, result for us. I think we needed to be going in there with a lead, and unfortunately, we didn't. And then to concede 2 early goals again just heaped a bit more misery. Because, looking back over the season, when we've conceded early, we've struggled to get the right result at the end of it. So it's just very, very disappointing. And I don't know, it's, we don't have any God-given right to be there. There's 8 teams that enter the playoffs. Don't take anybody to work out that only 50% of those teams can get to the Final Four. But overall, we just didn't show enough heart, enough grit, enough determination to make it to the Final Four, and that's very, very disappointing and hard to take.
Andy, you wasn't at Sunday's game, but was at Saturday's. So I'm guessing you was sort of following the result on Twitter, or did you have the webcast?
I was following on Twitter whilst helping out backstage at a gig with my dad, but not really concentrating on that. I was more concentrated on my hockey, to be honest.
There was an Evening Post article today which saying that Panthers dominated both games, and Brian Stewart was the reason that Coventry went through. From my point of view, I think that's been incredibly unfair on the Coventry Blaze. Your feelings on that?
Well, obviously, it's difficult to judge over the whole 120 minutes because obviously I only saw the 60 of it. What I will say is he was by far their MVP over the 2 games. Whether we dominated quite is probably a nice bit of spin, I suppose. At the end of the day, we outshot them heavily. Saturday's game, a terrible, terrible start. And it was compounded by the fact that as much as we were taking shots and getting shots off, a lot of them were relatively routine for Stewart. There was a lot that he was actually catching above his head from shots just inside the blue line or even just outside the blue line. So,
just to interrupt slightly, I mean, I think that was a problem yesterday. I thought he made a couple of absolute world-class saves on Saturday. The one that was going back across into an empty net, and he somehow got got his stick to it was an incredible save in the third period. But last night at the Sky Dome, I felt like you on Saturday, it was too regulation for him. There was just shots straight at him. I mean, Aaron, I don't know if you agree with me, but I thought that he didn't have a difficult save to make last night.
My general view on that was, I don't think the Nottingham Post article by Matt Davis is totally incorrect. I actually do think, the Coventry Blaze owe Brian Stewart a hell of a lot. Don't get me wrong, overall, as a team, they deserved it and worked hard. But Saturday night, Brian Stewart made some world-class saves, like you said. I mean, I was lucky to be in the box on Saturday night, and you could the save you're talking about, we were just like, that's unreal. That is world-class. Even if that was in the NHL, you would be saying that is a world-class save. Sunday night, we were pretty toothless. So yeah, the shots that he had to save, he's gonna. If you shoot from the blue line, like Andy says, or just out wide, he's gonna lap them up really, because he's that good of a netminder. We didn't test him close up, and we couldn't pretty much string 2-3 passes together that unsettled him and got him out of position. And that's a big difference. But I do think, Andy says he's MVP of the weekend. I do think they owe him a lot, but them as a team deserved it more than what we did.
Andy, is that a worry, really, that the fact that Blaze clearly wanted it more? I think for me, they just had more desire and showed more effort over the two games. But really, this is the playoffs. We've had what could be classed as probably a disappointing season. You think the players will get themselves really, really up for it. But from what I was seeing, there was only some of the Panthers roster who seemed really, really up for it, and others didn't seem to care. And that's what annoys me the most, is the fact that us as fans, we put in a lot of effort going to watch the team. We put a lot of emotion into watching the team. And it seemed to me that some of those players just didn't care like we do. And I think that's what made the exit hurt all the more.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's what you've got to think of is how do you judge how much a player cares? Obviously, you have workhorses like Boxall and Benedict, where if they have an off night, because they still skate 100% of the time, as fast as they can, as hard as they can, constantly, they will always look like they're trying. Whereas you will have a player, someone like a Chris Lawrence, where they don't do that. That's not part of their game. But it is a massive thing. It's very much like it's basically the players' version of paper talk that you get in the press, or when you read a newspaper article with a player, who talks about how great the fans are and stuff, and then it gets the fans on side, and that's ultimately what you need to do. And obviously, the result is the big killer factor, but the fact that the players look like they don't care is also something that's got to be taken into account. Because to a man, I'm 90% certain, and I'd like to think that there's not a single one of them who isn't disappointed by this weekend's results. But unfortunately, if they don't show that they're trying or show that they care, unfortunately as fans, we're going to pick up on that, because we do. Because if we didn't, we wouldn't be paying the money to go and watch it.
Aaron, going back to last night's game at the Sky Dome, what do you think was particularly the reason we didn't win that game or come close to equalising?
Our forwards, as a pack, didn't do enough. The one goal that we scored was scored by our most offensive defenseman in a second leg playoff quarter final. So not one of our forwards scored a goal. And in a two-legged tie in the playoffs, you need your forwards to contribute. And, the facts tell you that they didn't. You go back to Saturday night, Doucette, who we've had for a couple of months and is now our second highest goal scorer, and Benedict are the only people that scored. So you're looking at the players of Bruce Graham, Chris Higgins, Jacina, from import-wise. You'd be looking at those three to contribute somewhere over the two games, and they haven't. And at the end of the day, people will say that out of the two, Stuart had the better series over him and Modic. Yeah, I don't think Modic, had, and as a defence as a whole, we had the greatest of playoffs. I think, we had odd moments where we were poor and, the Blaze put those chances away. But when your forwards don't contribute, and let's be honest, this has been our season all over, then you're going to struggle. So I think, it's the fact that not one forward scored on Sunday when you needed them most. Yeah. Whether that means, Chris Lawrence didn't play this weekend, I'll ask you, could he have made the difference?
Well, to be honest, nobody knows why he wasn't playing. As far as we was concerned, the only people definitely not icing on Saturday morning was Craig Kowalski, David Clark and Colby Cohen. There was no mention of any injury to Lawrence, and yet there was no reason given why he was missing from the lineup. Now, I must admit I was surprised when he was announced as scratch for Saturday night. I was even more surprised when he was still announced as scratch for Sunday. So you can only speculate on why. I can only... The easy assumption to make is that he was injured. However, there's been another rumour come out today that he walked out on the club. Now, I don't know how true that is, and I'd be very, very surprised straight before a playoff game. But as the club hasn't come out and said why he was missing, then speculation is going to happen. Just going back to your point about the forwards, though, I agree with you entirely. And I was sat with Paul Barham for the entire match last night at the Sky Dome. We both was talking and said we just don't look like scoring. And this is in the third period, and the effort was there. I'm not going to say that it wasn't, but we was just not creating good enough chances. And for me, that's why I think Brian Stewart had a far easier night of it last night, because he just didn't have them that difficult saves to make, to be honest.
On that though, third period last night, that was domination for me from the Panthers. The Blaze couldn't ice it quick enough, or at least, I can't really remember, apart from what you'd say, Gertson's penalty shot, which it was one of the worst penalty shots I've ever seen in my life. But I can't remember much really of Blaze either puck possession or, I will say that we threw a lot at that third period. But again, we threw a lot at it, but we didn't get a goal. And, so the effort for me was there, and we dominated that third period. But again, you've got to put it in, you've got to put the puck in the net, and if you don't, you're not going to do it. You're not going to win. You're not going to tie that game. You're not going to go through to the final four.
I'm going to disagree with you slightly. I think we dominated the possession in the third period. As for actually dominating it, I'm not so sure. I think we dominated the third period on Saturday night, certainly, because we was all over Coventry and we was creating lots and lots of chances. Last night, I'm not so sure. Possession-wise, certainly, and you could tell that the Blaze were happy to get it out of the zone. But for me, we was just not creating any quality chances. I didn't think we was going to score a goal, and that's the worst thing. I think The nearest we got was where a shot that went in that was going wide, it deflected off a Blaze player and just went past the post. And I think that was the nearest we came to scoring in the whole third period. And for me, I'm sorry, it's just not good enough when you are chasing the game and looking for a way to get into the quarter final.
I mean, we did have opportunities in that game yesterday. You know, Boxy had a great opportunity.
Yeah.
That if that goes in, then it's different. You know, it's a different game, and who knows what would have happened. But so we did have opportunities, but again, it still comes back to the same issue, the same problem, the same talking point. We just overall in the season, and especially if you look at it in this playoff series, and even more yesterday, we just haven't put the puck in the net often enough. And that's the bottom line at the end of the day.
Andy, turning to the Coventry Blaze, because obviously they have gone through to the Final Four. For me, I thought Ryan O'Mara was excellent on Saturday night, and I thought he had a very good game last night as well. However, I thought last night their defence was superb in boxing us out. And I think that's another thing that has to be mentioned, is a lot of the reason that we didn't get the clear-cut chances is the Blaze was so disciplined defensively. Andy, who impressed you from the Blaze side? Just obviously going from the fact that you only saw Saturday's game.
To be fair, John, I'd have to agree with you. All night, Ryan O'Mara on Saturday was dangerous. Every time he got the puck, he was skating with ambition. He was skating with purpose. He was going relatively direct to the nets and looking at getting pucks towards the goal, whether that be making passes across the crease or taking shots, looking for rebounds, and even the sneaky one for the power play goal, going low short side, trying to beat Modig there. But obviously Modig got the save, but the rebound was put away. He epitomised Blaze performance over the weekend. I thought he battled hard. He played the body well. He was the standout player, a standout skater on the ice, shall we say? With Stewart, obviously, in my opinion, being the best player on the ice overall. I was quite impressed with Sescon as well. I thought he had a good game on the Saturday as well. You know, niggly, aggressive, everything that you sort of hate in an opposition player, because he was effective, and those two skaters were by far, in my opinion, head and shoulders above the rest of them. You know, that's not saying that the rest of them were bad. It's just a glowing indictment as to how good those two actually were on Saturday.
I think we'll move on to the rest of the quarterfinals that took place last week. We'll obviously talk more about what this probably means for the Panthers team when we come to the Ask CWTV questions a little later.
Can I just say one thing, John?
Of course you can.
I think, you have to give Chuck Webber a lot of credit here.
Absolutely.
Because when he came in, let's be honest, the Blaze were looking like they were going to be this season's Cardiff of last season. They looked like they were going nowhere. And you talk about the defensive performance last night especially. That, Chuck Webber has brought that to Coventry. You've seen it evolve since he pretty much joined that club. Yeah. And that has resulted in them being in the Final Four. And I think you just have to give that guy a lot of credit, because he's totally turned around the Coventry Blaze. So I think he deserves a mention as well.
Absolutely, yeah, you're absolutely right, Aaron, and he's done a fantastic job since he came in. But looking at the quality and the pedigree he had when he came as coach, it's probably not really a surprise. Once he got settled in, he has done an excellent job. We're going to move on to the other quarterfinals that took place over the weekend, and starting with Sheffield Steelers, the number 1 seeds, against the Fife Flyers, who were seeded number 8. A 3-2 win for the Steelers in Fife on Saturday night, scoring the winner just 34 seconds from time, and then a 3-3 result at the Motorpoint Arena on Sunday. Steelers going 3-0 up in that game, and Fife pulling it back to 3-3. just 5 minutes from time that set up a storming finish, but not enough to equalise. Steelers are going through to the Final Four as the first team there. Aaron, I'll start with you. Were you surprised that the Flyers pushed Steelers so close?
Maybe like after the first leg, you would have thought that was a good opportunity for Fife to set a marker, and obviously going back to the motor point, you would have fancied, the Steelers to go on and take it, especially once they got into the position that they did. But Fife, they've always been that type of team, haven't they? You know that they can always get back into a game if you let them have that opportunity. And maybe the Steelers showed a little bit of arrogance. Maybe they thought that they were, the hard bit was done, and now it was just a case of seeing the game out. And Fife, to me, Fife are one of those teams that I think in that playoff situation, look, they made the playoffs not that long ago.
That season.
Exactly, that's what I mean, not that long ago. That they would have wanted to experience that again. And Fife come across as a team to me that will not give up. They're not going to accept that game was finished. So I think, you underestimate Fife in that situation at your peril. And it nearly came back to bite Sheffield on the bottoms. It was probably a lot closer than what you might have thought, but I can't say I was surprised that they got back into the game like they did.
Andy, same question, I suppose.
You know what you're going to get with Fife. You're going to get battle, grit, and determination, and that combination of skill is always going to give you a chance, especially come playoff time. So, you know what? I'm not surprised it was so close. I am surprised it was that close, considering the scoreline as to what it was earlier on in the game. I was of the belief that when Sheffield pulled away with the goals that they had, that they would continue on that vein of form and perhaps get a couple more themselves. But you can't write these teams off. We'll speak about Hull later. It's the same thing there, where they're a couple of goals down, but it's the last game of the season potentially. So they're not going to go down without a fight, and that is what playoff hockey should be. And Fife have shown it, time and time again. I mean, we saw it last year. These are a damn good team as a collective unit. They might not have the league's best player. They might not have the greatest netminder that the country's ever seen. They might not have the depth of Brits and stuff, but they are going to battle as soon as that puck's dropped until the final hooter. And that's to be commended.
Okay, moving on to the next game, Belfast against Cardiff. One that was expected to be incredibly close actually turned out to be the biggest blowout of all. Belfast winning 1-0 on Friday night at the Odyssey Arena. Many thought that wouldn't be enough to take into the big blue tent. However, they went into the BBT and blew Cardiff away with a 7-3 victory. Andy, this was a surprise, I think it has to be said.
Yeah, absolutely. I disagree with you regarding thinking it was going to be close. I'm not going to lie. I thought it'd be close in Belfast, but I actually thought Cardiff would really blitz them in Cardiff. So I wasn't part of the. I wasn't part of this game's going to be close. I thought Cardiff were probably going to get that type of scoreline that Belfast got in Cardiff. So it was a huge surprise for me. I watched a bit of the first period, on Premier Sports, and Belfast were very, very good. They picked their spots and they scored at crucial times. They weren't doing anything particularly flashy, but what they were doing was scoring. So there's part of me that thinks that Belfast, we talked about it a bit on last week's show regarding they've had, a poor season by their standards, and recently they've really struggled. But they've known their fate for so long. They've now finally got games that are worth something and are meaningful games to play, and they look dangerous. I think that the Coventry-Belfast game will be close, but I also think that both of those teams have got a very, very good chance of winning this tournament.
Aaron, you watched the game on Friday, the game in Belfast.
Yep.
A very disciplined performance from the Giants.
It was. They turned up. They played playoff hockey. I mean, I must say, where has Kevin Westgarth been? I mean, I'll sound like a Giants fan now, but...
You are Mark Hitchcock and I claim my £5.
Yeah. You mean Hitchy, the long-term Giants fan? Yeah?
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah, that's the guy.
Yeah, that's the guy. No, but I mean, Kevin Westgarth, literally, he was like a different guy. He was hitting everything, battling for every puck. It was literally like somebody's turned around and told him, mate, you're playing in the EIHL playoffs tonight. So,
well,
do you know what I mean?
To be fair, if there's one guy who knows about playoff games, it's a Stanley Cup winner.
Well, yeah, I know, but you would also think watching the games that, well, what I've seen of Kevin Westgarth in the Elite League in general, the mind boggles as to how you can play like that one weekend when it's Elite League, and then you suddenly flick a switch and you turn up big time for just because it's the playoffs. Let's be honest, for a guy like Kevin Westgarth, our playoffs are pish compared to what he's used to.
Well, when he's won the Stanley Cup, so...
yeah, I know, but, ours is one weekend, as a quarter-final. It's a two-legged tie. It's not a series, and then you have a weekend. That's not playoffs for Kevin Westgarth. So for him to just flick a switch was just crazy. But I also felt that Cardiff they were happy to go into the BBT, or not maybe happy, but they were satisfied to go into the BBT one goal down. I felt like they saved quite a bit maybe for that second leg. And obviously, Belfast just went and blew them apart. And I'll be honest, I gave a few of our View from the Bridge friends a little bit of stick by telling them that they won't be at the playoff weekend, and that's come back and bit me on the arse as well. So I should learn from that. But I just think maybe I know, yeah. I just think maybe Cardiff kind of ran out of steam a little bit. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I didn't watch the second leg, obviously, but they've had such an emotional season with winning the Challenge Cup, going so close in the league, just the whole, just how they've been reborn. I just think maybe that it just ran out of gas maybe a little bit, and Belfast, to their credit, put them to the sword.
Okay, to finish off the final quarter-final, which was between second-seeded Braehead Clan and the seventh-seeded Hull Stingrays, and the Stingrays coming out with the victory, winning in overtime at the Hull Arena last night. So, this was the shock, I suppose, that everybody talked about that might happen. I know I think I said in last week's show that I thought Hull would win this one, but what a great performance from the Stingrays.
Yeah, they were, they were tipped to be the potential shock, but by the same token, a lot of people thought that Braehead would have too much for them, myself included. I thought there would be a chance that Hull could go through, but I was of the belief that, at the two legs, with the team that finishes got there, and the disappointment that they had, or they must have had, with regarding the league finale, I just felt that there'd be a bit of backlash there from Braehead for their Gardner Conference rivals. So yeah, it was a huge shock. I mean, it's great that Hull have done it. It's great that this is what is brilliant about the way these playoffs are done, is the fact that these teams do make the playoff finals. Hull were there a couple of years ago themselves. We had Fife last year. And they've beaten teams that people were putting down as shoo-ins to get there. So it is brilliant that these guys are there, and they thoroughly deserve it on their performance, because by all accounts, especially last night, they were down by 2. They managed to pull it back and then get the win in overtime.
Aaron, would you say that it's been a bit of an end of season failure for the Clan, because here they were, they had a chance of winning the league, big chance of winning the league, and didn't manage it. Yes, they got their Champions Hockey League qualification, but then losing out in the playoffs to Hull. Do you think they will consider this season now a disappointment after being such a promising season?
No, I don't know. I think they'll look at it from the fact that they went so close in the league. Of course, I think they'll be disappointed how it's ended, but I think on reflection they'll think, we won our conference, which for them obviously Dundee won it the year before, so again that makes them the strongest team up there and in that conference. I then think they'll look at it, the fact that they've got Champions Hockey League qualification. That's a big step for a club that you're talking about 5 years old, an organisation that is still growing and still learning, etc., still gaining fans and still building. So I think when they, in a few weeks' time, once it's all died down and you can actually reflect on it a little bit more and maybe just a little bit more clear-headed, I think they'll see it as a success, and it will drive them on to go that one step better next season.
Okay, so that is the Final Four decided, and Sheffield will take on the Hull Stingrays. That'll be a 1 o'clock face-off on Saturday. The 5 o'clock face-off will be the Belfast Giants against the Coventry Blaze, and we will be discussing those games a little later in the podcast. We're going to look at some of the Ask CWTV questions that you sent in to us over the past 24 hours. Many, many thanks for sending them in. Of course, if you want to get in touch with the show, do so on Twitter at CatsWhiskersTV. And if you want to ask us a question, use the hashtag AskCWTV. We had several questions to us asking about the coaching situation. So just to read a few out, Stuart Coles: does defeat and tonight in the season in general spell the end of Neilson's era in Nottingham? Richard Hololka, I believe it's pronounced: do you think Panthers need a new coach? And if so, what are our chances of getting a good one? David Spence: Corey, stay or go, simple as that. They weren't the only ones. There was several questions that we got all asking about our opinions on Corey Neilson and his position as Panthers coach. So quite a controversial and subject. So Aaron, I'm going to let you have the floor first on this one. So simple question: do you think Corey should stay on as coach? I
think Corey should stay on as coach if he has the desire, the motivation to carry on. If he has that, if he doesn't, and he feels that a change may be good for the organisation and himself, then I think he should go with his head held high. He is our most successful coach ever. You could say, I think the only downfall, really, looking back over the years, is we haven't sustained a league challenge right to the bitter end on enough occasions. The guy has won, I think, before this season, 9 out of 18 major trophies available during his tenure as coach. So any coach with 50% win rate of major competitions is doing pretty well in my book. I think if he does stop, there's obviously things to learn. The major disappointment that I've had is that it doesn't look like a Corey Neilson team, and that's what's most disappointing. Neilson has brought this sexy hockey that we've seen over the past, you wouldn't say this year, and you wouldn't say maybe last year, for whatever reason that is. So I would like to see that if he does stop. But for me, it comes down to himself personally.
Andy?
Personally, I'd like to see him stay. I think one of the biggest advantages for the sort of pro-Neilson fan base is the fact that we are not competing in Europe next year. The guy's got a clean slate. He's got 3 trophies to concentrate on. instead of trying to concentrate on also trying to make a name for the sport in Europe. So I think he should be here for another year. And I also think, that realistically, yes, last year wasn't fun to watch for a lot of it, and it was deemed somewhat of a disappointing season, but we still won a trophy. This is our first trophyless season. I asked the question yesterday on Twitter for this sole reason, because I knew we'd get a lot of talk out of this. This is our first proper trophyless season since 2008-2009 season. That is a long spell of winning trophies under one coach as well. And I just think if that hasn't earned him the chance of still being a coach after one trophyless season, I don't really know realistically what else he's supposed to do. I appreciate the league is the holy grail. I appreciate that the hockey hasn't been, as good to watch as it used to. But by the same token, he's been a great servant to the club, both as a player and obviously as a coach. And I just think, it's one season that we haven't won a trophy. And I don't think it's gone into meltdown. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's gone that bad. And I think that the questions being raised are perfectly acceptable. I agree that there's got to be some doubt over it because of what's happened this year. But personally, for me, I think he deserves at least one more crack of the whip.
I must admit, I'm very much on the fence at the moment for one of the reasons that Aaron says, and I just wonder if he still has the desire. And listening to some of his interviews recently, he sounded very, very down in the dumps, to put it mildly. He's just.
But to me, that shows you how much he cares for this team.
Oh, I'm not doubting. I am not doubting that for a second. But I just wonder if the desire is still there after all this time. I mean, he's been coached for what, 6-7 seasons. It's a long time to be coach of this club. However, on the other hand, and you mentioned the trophy record, you don't become a bad coach overnight. I don't like what some fans have been putting about how his trophy record has been lucky. I'm sorry, you don't win that amount of trophies out of luck. It's impossible. It's by good coaching and good recruitment the reason we won all those trophies. I would happily give him another year if he wants it. I think he deserves it. Like you say, it's one bad season in 6. Or I suppose if you count last season, it's a couple of bad seasons in the last 7. Oh. I come from a time where if you got one good season in 6, you was grateful. So
that's what I text you this today.
Yeah,
using my text there, Jono.
Yeah, I mean, well, you set them up, I'll deliver them.
You know.
Why do you think I have you on this show?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know better than I do. I've only been going for 14 years now, so
yeah.
So yes, I've seen it where we've been terrible for years on end. I'm under no illusions, Jono, but you've seen a hell of a lot worse than I ever have.
and that's what annoys me when I see people saying about what an abysmal season this is. It's not even close to being an abysmal season. we were in the running until the end of February almost. That's not abysmal. Abysmal was when we used to be out of the running in October. That was abysmal. I think what's happened is obviously with the increased amount of trophy wins, the expectation rises, and I suppose that'll bring me on to another question a little later. And I think we sometimes we expect a little too much, and I also think he's not been shown the due respect by some of the fan base for what he's done for this club, because I never thought I'd see a golden period like this where we was winning so many trophies. I mean, we was lucky if we won 1 trophy. We've won 9 in the past 6 seasons. That's incredible. So, Yes, I would be happy to give him another season, but if he has the desire, if he wants it, if he does want to leave, I would like him to leave on his own terms, because I think he deserves that. It's the least he deserves for everything that he has done for this club. And just something else I want to bring in is Jonathan Fernley, the Hull and Sheffield commentator, sent a tweet in regarding this. He put, "You don't sack a coach because of a failure, you sack them because you don't think they can turn it around." What makes people think Neilson can't? Why won't he do what he did in 2012-13 again? And I think that's fair comment.
Because people will say that, as they have done already on certain forums or social media sites, that anybody really with that team that we had in the Grand Slam season could have won those trophies. And people will say again, we'll go back to the fact that they think he's been lucky in winning the cups that he's won.
But that Grand Slam season, though, how many other coaches perhaps would have lost faith with someone like Bruce Graham in October and just gassed him, as opposed to benching him for a couple of games and then sticking with him? You know, Pat Gallivan was another one that got an awful lot of stick. And to be fair, up until November, David Ling was, one of the most criticised players on social media and on the forums from Panthers fans.
Oh, yes. Everybody wants him back now.
Wants him back. I tell you what, I said to Paul at the weekend I would swim across the Atlantic and bring him back on my back to get him back here next season.
I'd like to see that.
I'd water ski. I'd water ski over, but I'm not swimming.
I just think, to be fair, in the league that we have got, there is an element of luck regarding recruitment, because we don't have the excessive scouting networks that other clubs have. So there's always going to be some form of luck regarding recruitment, because you don't know. You're going a lot of time on hearsay regarding players and other people's opinions, and they've got to fit into your plans as much as everything else. But the guy has still coached a team to the 3 major trophies in one season, with incredibly well as well. It was, bear in mind that for the majority of the start of the season, a lot of people were moaning about the team, saying that it wasn't good enough and we needed more players, certain type of players and things. And you know what? They went out and got them this year to a certain extent. We were crying out for a goal scorer for a while, and then we went out and got him. Granted, everyone's been going on about the toughness side of things as well, and that was never really, taken on board. But by the same token, the coaches themselves and the players themselves know what's missing. It's not some miraculous sixth sense that fans have. These guys will know as well as everyone else what is needed. It's just finding that piece, and I'd like to have seen more toughness this year, even if it was just for the fact that at least you could go out fighting. But we with Europe and everything else in mind, we went down a completely different route, and I respect that. And I think next year though we will see a different team if Corey is in charge, because I think with just the league. And the domestic cups to think about, I think we'll see a very different team to what we've seen this season.
Okay. Well, that brings me on to another question that comes from Ben Stretton, and he says, "Do you feel fans are overreacting and have too high expectations of us?"
It's a tough one for me, because at the end of the day, we are one of, what would you say now, maybe 5 organisations that have good resources, good facilities. So for me, we should be challenging. We should be challenging for every trophy, every domestic trophy. Where I find this is where it swings, and I think where people kind of overreact a bit, is that they automatically think that we should win those. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not happy about not winning the major trophy, but I think you can't win everything every season. And when you look at it, we went out of the semi-final of the Challenge Cup in a game that we shouldn't have lost, really. in the position that we were in the situation of it. We shouldn't have lost that game. So yes, people can be, angry about that. The playoffs, again, it's a 50%. Do we have a God-given right to get to the playoff Final Four? No, we don't. Do we have a God-given right to win the league? No, we don't. So I do think people automatically accept that at the start of the season, the Nottingham Panthers will win one of those 3 trophies. And there's 9 other teams that will tell you that, well, hang on a minute, you're not going to win that because we're going to try and win it. So in my eyes, we should be challenging on every front. Do I expect us to win on every front? No, I don't. But I think a major thing about this season has been the style of hockey that we've seen. And I think that is a big crux of it. Because you've not seen on a regular basis, the team, especially of late, over the last so many months, the team fighting to win those games. And I think that's where people kind of lose sense and get angry and lose faith in the team and the coaching staff.
Andy, follow that.
Yeah, would you mind just reading out the question again? Just because, that went on a little while and I can't remember it.
Do the fans have too high expectations?
And overreact. Overreact, yes, possibly. Too high expectations, no, I don't think so. At the end of the day, every team's fans will set some form of bar as to where their team should be. We're in a position where we have fantastic resources. We have, a chunk of cash that we can spend on recruitment, and we should be able to get the best players, and the best facilities, and we should be challenging for trophies. Regarding the league this season, it wasn't great by any stretch, but we were only 9 points off, which sounds a lot, but by the same token, we went through one really, really barren patch in February. I'd like to think if we'd have won, probably half of those games, we'd have taken points off other teams, and who knows, we might have lost out by 1 point or 2 points. And all of a sudden it's, weren't they close and didn't they battle and try? But they didn't. And that's, like we said earlier on in the show, and like Aaron said, the style of play is also what doesn't endear them because of the way that we've gone. We don't have, someone who's going to go out and really stir the pot when perhaps it's needed. But that's a style that we went down. That was the route we went down. And ultimately, if you recruit for that, then you don't have the chance to do the different things, which again is what a lot of people seem to criticise Corey for, is his lack of plan B over so many years. But realistically, we've seen teams before at our rink, this season where their plan B has been to rough other teams up, and invariably it doesn't work. Sometimes it will, but just as many times as it will, it doesn't. So you have to have different strategies and things, but by the same token, you've got to play to your strengths, and you can't be worried about what other teams are going to do. You've got to concentrate on your style, and I think the biggest problem that we've had this season is the fact that, because we've been so used to watching this free-flowing, entertaining brand of hockey, it's been fun, and we've won a couple of trophies. The problem is, as soon as you take that free-flowing, entertaining hockey away and you don't win, it becomes much more, magnified. If we'd have won the league this season, no one would have cared how we played. If we go a season and win games 1-0 playing trap hockey, but we win the league, no one will care. The crowds might dip slightly, but with the fan base that we have in Nottingham, I don't think it'd be too significant. And we'd have won the league, which is ultimately what people want to see us do. So, I just think that the problem that you have with a team like we had this year is because there was a lack of entertainment. As soon as the results start going against you, everything seems to.
Okay, a couple more questions that I want to get in before we end. So the next question comes from Adam Gregory. He says, "Are the Panthers organisation the furthest away from their fans despite having the biggest fan base?"
Yes, and I think it's been sort of pointed out today. Someone was talking about the whole social media thing, and I you know, they don't have to use social media, but it is a fantastic tool. You know, and I just think that they are, you know, it's the same with webcasts. When we talked about webcasts last week, you know, we do seem to be constantly behind the pack when it comes to these type of things that the fans love. Let's face it, we love it. We want interaction with the team. We want, you know, the chance to watch them home and away if we can't get there. And we do seem light years behind some of the other clubs in the Elite League. So yeah, I would say yes, we probably are. I'm not saying though that, you know, the players should be, you know, every week they should be out socialising with the fans. You know, I don't think that's right at all. But I think as a whole, the way that the club communicate with the fans and the way that they deal with the fans is by far one of the worst in the league.
One last one, because we have been going a while on this one, a lot of discussion, so thanks for all your questions this week. And that comes from Tim Utton. He says, "Which game day marked the high point of the season for us, and which was the lowest point?" Can I start on this one?
Yeah, because then that gives us a chance to think about it.
I've got my high point. Yeah. I can't think of my low point.
I've actually got a few high points from this season. I think the obvious one is the victory against Hamburg in the Champions Hockey League, which was a phenomenal performance. Several domestic performances, and I'm thinking of the 7-2 victory against Sheffield, the 2 victories at home against Braehead, which were both excellent performances. Some of the away victories in Belfast, which were outstanding. So for me, plenty of highs. However, if I had to pick one, I think it would be standing in the O2 World Arena in Hamburg and just thinking, I'm about to see my team play a proper competitive game in this setting. It doesn't get much better than that. And I think I was so proud. Stood there as a fan thinking, the first game I saw was Panthers against the Streatham Redskins in the early 1980s. And here I am now in 2014 as it was then.
Would that be before you were born as well, Aaron?
No comment, Andy. Come on.
Okay.
But yes.
Anyway, but yes, that was my high point.
My high point would be the Belfast home weekend, the doubleheader, beating Belfast both games for a couple of reasons. One, it was a really good weekend. Obviously, we did the special podcast with A View from a Bridge and Paul Aitley, which was a personal high point as well. But also, it was a real crux point in our season. Obviously, it didn't kick on from there. I appreciate, but at the time, you know, we were going through a spell where a lot of people were saying, you know, this team are done. They're not good. They're not good enough. They won't win the league. Blah blah blah. And then we came out and we performed like we did and showed that never say die attitude to win those games. And obviously, the winner on the Sunday coming with seconds left. You know, and the high point of being propelled up into that, you know, we might do this, was really hard to top for me this season. Like I say, I appreciate it. It didn't last very long after that. I believe it was, in fact, that was the last game we won for quite some time in the league. So you know, I can appreciate that. Ultimately, it might not have been a high point of the overall season, but I think for general feeling at the time, that would be my personal point.
Aaron, your high point.
Well, I think you've both made very good points there and picked some good ones. I'd agree on both of those ones that you've suggested there. I mean, I never thought I'd see the Panthers in an arena like the O2 in Hamburg. The whole experience was just unreal. The home weekend, like Andy says, I think that was at a point where we thought, we could possibly turn the season into something. The only ones that I would add would be the away victories. A couple, the win Boxing Day in Sheffield. If my memory serves me correctly, 4-1.
4-0.
4-0, sorry.
Boxing Day, yeah.
4-0. And then the 2 in Belfast. The Sunday in March, we just totally dominated that game, and I thought that was beautiful. And then the 4-1 victory that we had earlier on in the season in Belfast, because that's a tough place to go, and we've now seen what the Giants can perform like, and I just thought they were very big, strong performances. And to be honest, I know how upset that made Davey from a view from the bridge.
I'm going to say, if he's listening to this, he's probably sticking needles in dolls of all of us. Sometime tomorrow, you start feeling stabbing pains.
Don't worry,
never forgive, never forget.
No, hashtag.
Hashtag.
Don't worry, he'll still be at the playoff weekend. I'll get that one in there before Davey tells me.
Low points.
Challenge Cup second leg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't say anymore.
I wasn't there for that, so I wouldn't necessarily have the same feelings. But that was a particularly low point, wasn't it?
I think I'd have to go for that one as well, for the simple reason that it's a long time since I've felt that dismayed after a game. I think everybody knows from the podcast that we did the day after. It hurt, that one. It hurt a lot.
I'll tell you what, I'll throw another one in there as well very quickly.
Go on.
Coventry away after 75,000 penalty shots, where 7,499 of them were the worst penalty shots I've ever seen in my life. I don't think I've ever willed Coventry to score a goal as much as I did that night. But it still doesn't really come to terms like on the same level as the Challenge Cup second leg for me.
Yeah. Okay, I think we shall leave that mammoth CWTV session there. Thank you very much once again for sending your questions in. We are going to look ahead to the upcoming Play-Off Finals weekend at the NIC this coming weekend, and some of the festivities that will be going on. Before we do, a special announcement, and on Sunday afternoon at 2:00, myself and Paddy Smith, and hopefully Andy and Aaron and a few other guests will be doing another live show at the Bunkers Hill Inn in the upstairs section of the pub. It will be free entry. I believe under 18s will be welcome at that time. So 2:00 upstairs in the Bunkers Hill Inn. It'd be great to see you there. We'll have plenty of special guests and fans and Q&As and lots of interaction and some good laughs, hopefully. So we will hopefully see you there. Okay, on to the playoff semi-finals, and the first one, which will be facing off at 1:00, will be the Sheffield Steelers against the Hull Stingrays. So, Andy, I'll start with you. How do you see this one going?
My head says that it will not necessarily a walkover, but comfortable, shall we say, for Sheffield. I can't see them not getting through to the final. I'd like to be proved wrong, and I hope for the neutral and the fans sort of point of view that it is close, and we get a game like the Fife Belfast one last year. But I think deep down, I think that Sheffield will have too much for Hull.
If Sheffield turn up with the right attitude, then they will progress. If they don't, then Hull have a very good chance of getting through.
My heart would love Hull to get through, because not only would it be great to see Hull in the final, it'd be bloody hilarious as well. But I've got to be with you, Andy. I just think Sheffield will have too much for Hull. I just think the quality of the players that Sheffield have got should see them through to the final. So the second game, 5:00 face-off, the Coventry Blaze against the Belfast Giants. I'm expecting quite a humdinger from that one. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, me too. I think Belfast have probably got more punch, a bit more sort of. You'd expect them to be able to score more goals than Coventry, but if Brian Stewart plays like he did this weekend, I think Coventry have got by far the better defensive side of things. So it could be a real cracker of a game, and I hope it is. I'm going to sit on the fence on this and say I genuinely don't know who's going to win that one.
I am going to put stick my neck out. I think Belfast are going to take it by the odd goal in 7. I think Brian Stewart could win it for the Blaze, but I just think Belfast again. I think they've got their attitude in the right place after this weekend, and they're actually my dark horses to take the playoff trophy overall. However, they may be my dark horses, but we know to compound this season, the Sheffield Steelers are going to win it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think the winner will come from the Belfast-Coventry tie, and I think Coventry will beat Belfast on the Saturday.
Okay. I agree with Jono. I think Sheffield are certainly the favourites to win the whole thing. Sometimes playing the later game and being slightly more tired and being in somewhat of a more difficult game as it's supposed to be on paper. I think sometimes that is an advantage as much as a disadvantage, that some people would automatically think, they've been more tired, they've been in a more gruelling game, but they're already at that intensity level, whereas the team who's had what some people will say would be the easier tie would have to find that level quickly. But I just think that realistically Sheffield have probably been the best team all season. They've got arguably the best line in the league with Matteo War, Thorny and Fretta, and I just can't see past them, to be honest.
Okay, well, we shall see what happens next week. A couple of other things that are going on. There will be a playoff party at the Bunkers Hill, which I believe starts at 7:30 on Friday night. All are welcome at that. And if you are coming down to the playoff weekend, as usual, it should be an absolutely fantastic weekend. Safe journeys to everybody who is coming to Nottingham, and we shall hopefully see you at the NIC. We will have a show next week. It'll be slightly different. We're hoping to record it all throughout the weekend, so we'll hopefully have a few interviews, some fine interviews, and if you see us and we've got the microphone, then come and have a word with us. Come and say hello. It would be great to see you. So, all that remains to say is thank you very much, Mr. Aaron Lord.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jonathan Bullard.
And thank you to you as well, Mr. Haywood.
No worries at all, anytime.
Yeah, and I believe you're off to New York next Monday.
I am, yes.
Taking in some Rangers games?
The last 4, yes.
Oh, yes. I hope they win a few for you.
Well, they need to get out of a bit of a slump that they're in at the moment. But yes, I'm extremely excited.
Well, have a very, very good time. So, as we said, we will be back next week with our playoff special, and then hopefully we'll be doing a Panthers season review sometime after that. But until then, thank you very, very much for listening once again, and thanks for listening to us throughout the season, and we will see you again very soon.